Hello, it's Mr. Layman. I'm here today to talk to you about the American Revolutionary War. Now, this is going to take place in two parts. This is the first part of how England lost the American Revolutionary War. And the next time we're here, we're going to do how the 13 colonies, aka America, won the American Revolutionary War. But it's not like the British just completely fumbled the ball. And it's not like America was so star spangled awesome that we were just going to crush the British. It's a little more complicated than that and is going to lead to various other kinds of problems and tactics throughout the rest of, I guess, humanity, because a whole bunch of other countries copied what we did in the American Revolutionary War, and other countries also copied what the British did in the American Revolutionary War. So today, let's get into it. So, the American Revolutionary War, independence, and a military victory. So, we're just talking about military stuff today, but this is not going to be a big giant list of battles. This is going to be like concepts. Okay, so the American Revolutionary War is from 1775 to 1783. And in that time, England loses. And the colonists end up winning the American Revolutionary War against the British and King George III. The USA, being a country, is a proof of that. But how did the 13 colonies defeat possibly the most powerful and one of the largest nations of all time? I'm going to break this into two sections. So today is going to be how the British lost, and next time is going to be how the Americans won. So I've organized this into an internet and student friendly numbered list. Number one, the British are really hesitant. The first major battle, the English don't attack, they don't press their advantage. This is the first battle of the war, and General Howe is just like waiting on orders. Oh, should I attack New York and trap George Washington and his major officers there so that they can be prosecuted for treason? Well, no one told me to do that, so I'm just kind of going to hang out. And then George Washington got away. And then, like, oh my gosh, I should not have folded this up. And then this happened, right? So, like, how'd that work out, General Howe? Anyway, over time, the colonists, they are like improving at fighting and their tactics get better. But the British, they just kind of, what? They're just waiting on orders from someone else. They should have attacked. They don't like get into it with the Americans. Even George Washington agrees it was dumb for the British not to press their advantage because he wrote that in his memoirs. He's like, wow, we should have really lost the war, like right as it started. Howe's too slow and he's in command for too long. This is not the kind of a war where you just march two big armies at each other and then go, and then you have Senate of Representative who goes, yes, we have more people, so you will go home and pay us to not fire at you. This isn't that kind of a war. Howe is eventually replaced, but by then it's too late. The Americans, they are improving with each battle. This is an unconventional kind of war needing new tactics, and Howe is just not the right man for the job. If you're going to win a war, chances are you're going to have to win it quickly and decisively. Otherwise, you end up with something like the 100 Years' War or like the Vietnam War or like the Iraq War, which as of this taping, it's 2026. And as of this taping, we still have troops there. Okay, is that solved? Not really. There you go. Number two, the army. Now I'm aware that saying, oh my gosh, like you just mentioned at the top, that the British have this big giant army and they're this huge, powerful country. Yes. However, the primary goal of why the 13 colonies exists and the British, in terms of the British caring about that, is they're using it as a revenue source. So the more the 13 colonies do things like we talked about in our couple of last units, where it's like you have the Boston Tea Party and they're boycotting all your British goods and they're being just like generally annoying and it's like costing you money. Especially since the British spent all of their money on the 7 Years' War prior to this, the thing that the 13 colonies made last an additional 2 years because we kept fighting with the French and the Indians. That one, where the British are like, oh my gosh, now we have to pay off all this stuff. How do we get money? Like, that's why there's not all that taxation. Anyway, at this point, it's a cost cutting measure. So they're like, we're out of money. So tell you what, To save money, we're going to reduce the size of the English army, and it had been reduced to around 50,000 people planet-wide. That's pretty small. Although I will say that their army is pretty effective, and their bayonets are actually very good. Mostly because you can still fire a British gun with the bayonet fixed, as opposed to the French bayonet, which is a plug bayonet, which fits in the barrel, so you can't fire the gun. But anyway, during the American Revolutionary War, they have increased their numbers to about 130,000 people. So, like, you've almost increased it by 3 times. Well, how'd they do that? Number one, the main way they did it is they started letting rich people buy commissions in the army. So if you're some rich person and you want like social credit, you would be like, oh, I'm a lieutenant. Oh, I'm a captain. Oh, I'm a colonel in the army. And it's like the odds of you having to fight are pretty low. And even if you are having to fight, you're going to be like way in the back. So it's not really like a huge problem for you. And it's also a good way for like the government to get money because rich people are paying you to join the army. And then your army looks bigger. And if an army looks big on the field, I'm not going to want to go fight it. So rich people being in the army, cool. They get prestige. The problem is they don't necessarily know what they're doing. This does mean that the army gets more people in it, but it doesn't help their elite troops get commanded particularly well. So you have this core of fairly effective, well-trained soldiers being led by a bunch of rich people that think they know better, but they don't. Just because you have more people doesn't mean they know what they're doing. In fact, a lot of times you end up with this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the more sure you are that you know what you're doing, the less likely it actually is that you do know what you're doing. So these people feel like they're skilled because they're like, well, my lapel says admiral, so obviously I know what I'm doing. I mean, I gave you money to put this what is essentially a costume at this point on me, so therefore I know what I'm doing. The problem is also compounded by the fact that to help them fight, they have flushed out their army and filled it out with Hessians. These are mercenaries from Germany. Germany doesn't quite exist at this point, but a lot of countries at this time period are trying to find ways to make money. And the people living in what will be Germany are basically hiring themselves out as mercenaries. And those are the Hessians. They make money by fighting in like random wars. And the Hessians are cool if you pay them in cash crops, which is what the 13 colonies are growing. So it's like, okay, you don't have to pay me in like British pounds or gold or like silver or something. You could pay me in an actual trade good. That's fine. And this saves them a bunch of money. And they hire like 30,000 of these Hessians. It's like, oh, okay. So you're going to hire professional soldiers who might not actually speak English. In general, the British Army is incredibly diverse, and this is a problem. All these different viewpoints and ideas are not compatible. The English have a history of not liking other parts of the British Empire, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, places like that. So they don't really consider other people in Great Britain very highly and then force them into an army. So putting all them into a military where you have also a bunch of rich people who don't necessarily know what they're doing in charge, German mercenaries, and then you're going to try to rope in a bunch of loyalist colonists while you're also being like, hey, Scotland, I know we've like oppressed you for hundreds of years. Go fight these colonists. It's like, yeah, that's not going to work. They all don't like each other. And the German mercenaries are not going to be interested in this whole, hey, let's like kind of bumble around and like not press our advantage. It's like, no, we do a good job when we like smashy and then we grab, like we take all their stuff. Like that's the goal, right? And the British are like, whoa, don't just be indiscriminately murdering the colonists. A whole bunch of them are loyalists. We don't want you doing that. We're going to talk more about that later. Part 3, the Navy. Oh, man. The British Navy is awesome. Yeah, sun never sets on the British Empire. Heck yeah. They won the Battle of Gravelines, lost a ship. Spain lost half its navy in a day. It's one of the reasons this conversation's in English. Yeah. What's going on with their navy? Well, they got one little problem. They have 1,000 ships. And someone, King George III of England, decides to fix 900 of these ships at the same time, right when the war starts. You have a large navy, yes, but not at that exact moment. So this means they can't do as much trade. They also can't move their armies around in boats very effectively. And they can't get as much wood from the colonies because they can't enforce that trade. And they're using wood from the colonies to like refurbish their ships. And if the 13 colonies are revolting, they can't like repair their navy as effectively. So it's like, you probably should not have done that all at the same time. They do eventually do a blockade of the 13 colonies, which limits their trade. But the British have territory all over the world, and this is hurting their ability to wage war effectively. They need to pay this army. They need to hire more Hessians. And by the way, the Hessians do not care about causing damage to the colonists of their property, just winning the war they're paid to fight in. So it's like, this is not as efficient as we could be doing this. And it seems like it's a matter of leadership. People who are in positions of wealth, people who are in positions of like inherited, landed aristocracy making decisions that aren't working great. King George III got his job because his dad was the king. A lot of these rich people that are buying their way into the military got their wealth because of their like inheritance from their parents. So like this is a little bit of an ideological kind of element of like, I should be winning because of my position, whereas the Americans are like, no, you pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. News travels too slowly as war broke out between the 13 colonies and the British when shots are exchanged at Lexington and Concord. We don't know who fired first, but somebody did. The British were super surprised. Like, there's a war happening? Because the Parliament was like, haven't we solved this? Lord George Germain, the representative of the Americas, because yes, we do have a representative in the British Parliament. Now, granted, we're not individually voting, but that person's our voice in the Parliament. He said, hey, do not fire if you're fired upon. We have worked out a treaty. It's signed by Parliament. It's going to allow the 13 colonies to be represented better. They're going to have to pay a higher tax yield because they don't get equal representation because the taxes in England are higher than the taxes in the Americas. So if you want an equal tax yield, yes, you can have it, but it's going to cost you more money in terms of taxation, but you will be able to vote. The problem is it's a 10-week trip across the Atlantic. By the time the message arrives, war's already happening. Also, several Parliament members get mysteriously assassinated, and they're all kind of on the pro-peace side. And when they die, they're replaced with people on the pro-war side. Now, a couple of them are like, this guy fell down the stairs. So it's like, was he pushed down the stairs? Was it icy? Like, was it, I just happened to be living in the late 1700s and like a splinter might kill you? Sure. But like, a lot of these pro-peace guys get swapped out with pro-war guys, and those votes matter. So like a plan for fair treatment for the 13 colonies was worked out, but after the war starts, it's not going to get worked out very well. So because you're getting less sympathy for the American cause in Parliament, which would be the thing that would end the war. Ugh. Fifth problem. Okay. 4 countries are in this thing I call the Big Four during this time period. England, I guess the British, Spain, the Dutch, and France. And they're all kind of vying for power with each other. You could also put Portugal in there, but since Portugal is not really in like North America, I'm not including Portugal. All 3 of them go, oh, England, the thing that is at the top. Well, this seems like a good time to start trying to take something from them while they're distracted by the American Revolutionary War. The biggest participant is France. They physically just joined the American Revolutionary War. Mostly their plan there is spite. They fight the British not because they love our cause. They just hate the British that much. They help train U.S. troops through conscription, which France is very good at, and help command the less experienced armies of the United States. By the way, this is a terrible idea. It's like a horrifying idea. And the advisors to King Louis oh my gosh, I just blanked on it. This is why I don't like doing Zooms like this, because it's live and I can't remember. Louis the 16th, 17th, one of the later Louis. They said, hey, you really ought not to support this war. And he went, oh, I'm definitely going to support the war. And they went, okay, Why do they not want him supporting the war? You might have said something like, hey, Mr. Layman, France is an absolute monarchy, and at least the British have a parliamentary or a constitutional monarchy where they let people vote. And in France, nobody votes. The king has total authority. So you're going to send a whole bunch of French troops to America, teach them all about freedom, and then bring them back to France. Also, this bankrupts the French treasury. So now they're poor and you can't pay them, and they learned about freedom and overthrowing a monarch. Bro, that's you. Like Spain, they're terrible. They're disorganized. After Gravelines, they're just so much less of a threat, and they just becomes decline for hundreds of years. By the way, Battle of Gravelines was 1588, and it's like it's 200 years later, and you guys still haven't pulled it together. They do attack various outposts for trade, poorly, but at an annoying enough rate that it's like, stop. Gibraltar is one of the areas they attack. The Dutch, which is like, that's a real slap in the face because the English helped get the Dutch freed from the yoke of Spain. The Dutch are like, yeah, we'll trade with the United States. We'll trade with whoever. Doesn't matter. They have a free market. Trade with whoever you want. And it's like, could you not trade with those guys? Eventually, the Dutch will more or less kickstarter our country with like a founding loan, which from their perspective, they were like, you only want this much? It was like $10 million or something like that. They're like, this is going to run your government for how many years? This is a suspiciously low number, but okay. So yeah, England doesn't have any allies. All its like it's more like continuous enemies in Europe see this as an opportunity and are like, oh well, now you're distracted. In the colonies, who is the enemy? Not everyone thinks the 13 colonies should revolt. I'm not even sure it's a good idea as an American living in the year 2026. But knowing who's on your side and who isn't is really important in knowing your enemy. This is a good breakdown in the colonies. Okay. 40% of the colonists are patriots. They are people who want the American Revolutionary War to exist. They want to have their own country. They're in open revolt, or at least they're revolting. And this number doesn't start at 40%, but it like edges up through the course of the 8-year course of the war and is usually hovering at around 40-ish%. But over time, this number increases. The loyalists, they support the British openly. They work with the British to fight against the Patriots. They're loyal to the British crown through trade, but also in war. They decrease over time. So the longer this war is going on, the Patriots are increasing and the loyalists are decreasing. But about 35% of the country is neutral. They don't really care who wins. They're looking at it more like, this war is in the way of me trading cash crops to people. So like it is annoying. A lot of merchants are in this group, which is why there's like this trade with the Dutch, which the British have a difficult time enforcing because they don't have the numbers to make a heavy blockade. But this number fluctuates throughout the war. It goes up and it goes down, depending on like how the war is going or the atrocities committed by a whole bunch of German mercenaries that might not exactly be able to understand, hi, I really love England, before like, charging at you with a horse and cutting you in half with a sword. As this war continues, the numbers change. A lot of people begin to hate the British, and that just starts to increase year after year after year. But in terms of a military victory, there's not a big military victory for the Americans for a while. And even if you're looking at stuff towards the end of the war, a lot of that is tipped very heavily towards the French, being there like preventing like a naval escape for the British. But honestly, like Thomas Paine, when he wrote Common Sense, he mentions all these things where he's talking about like, you're not going to win England. Like you don't have the physical number of people required to hold this territory. 13 colonies are bigger than England. Like it doesn't logically make any sense that this island will control an entire continent. And we don't even know how big the continent is because we haven't like measured it. It's huge. You're not going to control this. And you're not going to control this and all these other territories that you have. It's just not going to happen. So for a lot of the colonists, it's not about winning the war, it's about attrition. They just have to wait for the British to make enough people angry with their ill-trained and clunky army, with the people at the top, frustrated elite troops being commanded by rich goofballs, disagreeable diversity members. You have the Irish in your army. Good luck with that during this time period. They treat the Irish like they're basically goblins. They're the German mercenaries who are there for a paycheck and don't care about causing any damage to loyalists or neutral parties. Every day this war costs the British more money, and it's time, and you're fighting a foreign war. Like, you have to ship troops across the Atlantic Ocean. The stricter and harsher the British are to find the patriots, whoever they are, the more people they anger into being patriots in the first place. And now we get into attrition. Attrition is not fighting to win. It's fighting to stall. It's fighting to not lose. And that's the secret in winning a war, especially if you have the home front advantage, which the colonists do. It's not the 13 colonies invading England. It's England invading the 13 colonies. And the secret to winning a war, just don't lose. How'd that Vietnam War work? That would be how. How did Afghanistan work? There you go. Just don't lose. I used to teach at a school that had a basketball team. And I told the kids, I can beat any of you one-on-one. And they're like, Mr. Layman, no, you can't. I'm like, I promise you, I can. And they go, Mr. Layman, you're, and I would say, I am old. I'm not super tall. I don't have depth perception. I don't see distance very well. You need that to put the ball in the hoop. I don't play basketball. I think I can't remember the last time I touched a basketball. It might be 5 years since I've touched a basketball. And I will beat them every single time, one-on-one. A game, they play basketball an hour a day, and I'll still beat them. See, the thing is, I have keys to the building. It's my home team advantage. My parents are not going to come and pick me up. I don't have like a bedtime. And so they have to go home at a certain point. And some days I would stay after work, especially if I have a whole bunch of things to grade, or if I'm writing up report cards and stuff like that. That takes like 8 hours to do. I'd stay behind at the school for sometimes 5 hours after work. I'd have security kick me out sometimes. I don't need to be the best at basketball. I don't even need to be good at basketball. I just need to not lose. So all I have to do is wait for the kid to get picked up by a parent, wait for the kid to have a bedtime, wait for the kid to be like kicked out. And I'll just stay. Oh, you left the court. Oh, well, I'm going to just keep shooting 3-pointers until I got more points. There's no time limit on a war. Oh, that's not fair. I don't care. Oh, did my unconventional tactics annoy you? Why, it's almost like you should maybe adapt to these new kinds of unconventional concepts, or you're going to lose. And that's what happens to the British. For the British, this war is about economics. It's about saving money. And the more money the 13 colonies cost the British, the more annoying the 13 colonies can be. The British might just cut their losses and go home. And that's kind of what happens. They go, you know what? It's not worth it anymore. We out. Next time, we're going to talk about how the Americans won. And then we're going to mesh these two things together, talk about how we could learn things from both sides. I hope you have a super awesome, cool day. I'm Mr. Layman. Take it easy. Bye.